lies, and it just seemed to be moving so rapidly. Um, Lots have been happening since last week, Friday, and both myself and BeJoy have been doing lots of things, meeting with people, dialoguing, listening a great deal to people, and really trying to get our hearts and our minds around what's happening, trying to make sense of all what's happening. Yesterday, I received a phone call from one of the guys in our network. He's had several deaths in his family, in his circle, and he was ringing me up about whether I could take the funeral service of someone, young man who died just suddenly and died of COVID. And I was moved. I was moved. He was emotional. I became emotional. And yet we must acknowledge that there's a lot of pain that is around today in not only in the big cities, but right across the nation and right across the nations of the world. Another good friend of mine, she's been posting on Facebook to pray for her mother. Her mother's making steady recovery. She's not fully out yet, but the trajectory is the right way, right direction. So we acknowledge, and I want to acknowledge that there's been all of this pain going on. BeJoy, what have you been up to since last week, Friday?
Yeah, thank you, Les. So last week, over this past week, we've been having various different discussions. I'm aware that we've had big gatherings with some of our street pastor initiatives, just to hear what's going on, some of their feelings, some of their emotions, and also just some of the activities that they have been able to participate with, and also some of the struggles, because we're aware that not all of our teams have been able to operate in this time. But actually, they have still been active in praying for their communities, in speaking with the local authorities and the local police, because that's the nature of the work that we do. It's the development and the strength of relationship of agencies and people and communities all over the UK, because it's only together that we can actually effectively put together a program to say, let's move forward. And I've also had conversations with school pastors around the same thing. And there are some fascinating and some exciting projects looking at how we can create spaces, both physically and virtually, to support not just the students who have been going through a tough time and have been incredible through this season, just their resilience and their heart to want to know more. And it hasn't been easy for them. So our school pastors, the teachers, the staff have been doing a fantastic job in looking after them. And some great things like mentoring, litter picking, safe spaces for teachers and parents have been taking place all over the UK. And so there's some real pockets of hope that have been taking place. And also this the runway, which was launched and set up by Esther Bonsu Liebert, has created a space where discussions can be taking place around issues and concerns around COVID-19, around the vaccine. So the week before, we had a session where we looked at the vaccine itself from both a scientific and a theological background, which was great. We had almost 100 plus um, audience members tuning in just to hear what the discussion was, and the panelists who had to share were great. And this past week, we looked at some of the mental health concerns and issues that have been surrounding COVID-19, the different generations, and actually what place our GPs, our doctors have had to play in that, but also how
Mm.
our churches can step up to the plate and be part of the response and the intervention in that. And I
BeJoy,
want to speak more.
BeJoy, I was going to ask you before you go on, because you mentioned the mental health, and I know you mentioned something of students, but what are you sensing in terms of children and young people? Children in the primary school, children in in secondary school, young people. Is there a sense of how they're taking it? Because I know that I spoke just last night to some young people, and they were talking about losing rhythms,
Yeah,
out of sync with routine, finding it difficult. What are you
yeah,
getting?
yeah, absolutely. So I think with this lockdown in particular, the majority of the young people nationwide have found it very, very difficult. It has not
Mm,
been easy. Um, Having to be online in front of a screen and without having been able to have that connection with their peers in the same way has been tough. And also, I don't think the weather has helped. We're often aware that actually the amount of
mm,
daylight and the amount of sunshine we can absorb has such a big impact on our emotional state. And the fact that in January it is a dark month for
mm.
everyone in the UK, that has an impact. And we need to recognize that as things get lighter and brighter, people's emotional states will improve. But it's about how can we help our young people and our students process this period and help build
Okay.
their resilience as we move
Mm.
forward. And I want to
Appreciate
speak
that.
about this concept of hope because it's something that we speak about a lot within the church. And as we move forward, we've got to ask the question actually, what does that hope actually mean? And what are some of the practical, physical things that we can put in place to say, this is what our hope is leading us to? And we've got some great friends
Great.
at the yourneighbor.org who have just launched their Give Hope campaign, looking at how churches can engage with being part of that practical application. And an analogy that I shared with my school pastors, and sometimes with our street pastors, is hope is helping open people's eyes. And all about saying that
Mm.
we believe as Christians, we have this light that is guiding us, that is leading us, that is taking us out of darkness and bringing us into a place of peace. And this
Excellent.
period of Lent is that reflection of Jesus physically taking us through the darkness to the time where we see him on the cross into that light. And that's our
Wonderful.
encouragement that Jesus is here with us and walking with us through this time.
BeJoy, just take us back to the runaway program because I know you've been discussing. You said, oh, last week over 100 people there. Just take us back a bit. So, what are people saying? No, I know that a lot of people who were on that platform weren't Christian or on the fringe of faith. What are people talking about? What are they, anxious about? What are they concerned about?
Definitely. The biggest challenge of why the runaway was set up is they felt that this particular generation, the people who have left the church but
Mm,
necessarily haven't left their faith, are saying that actually sometimes the church doesn't have the space for us to have these discussions in a healthy way to be able to bring across your own opinions, your perspectives, and
mm,
talk about them in a place where we can disagree well or have differing opinions. And so people are saying, actually, I don't agree with that, or here is something else. And we, as a runaway and the discussion panelists, are able to take some of those opinions, some of those ideas, and expand upon them and actually share the different perspectives that are out there. And from there, come together and say, actually, together, we as a church, we don't have to think the same way, but ultimately, we are a family, we are a community. And that's what
mm.
the runway is all about, creating a space where we as a church body can come together and say, we don't have to agree on everything, but let's move forward and work through this together.
Excellent. So next week Wednesday, they could tune into the Runaway by YouTube, by Facebook. How did I do that?
Yeah, so The Runaway is currently being hosted on Estebansu's YouTube channel, but it's going to be shared live via my own personal Facebook stream, the Ascension Trust Facebook stream, and the Street Pastors Facebook stream. So you can log in. All of the information will be coming out shortly with the panelists for next week. So this coming Wednesday, The Runaway is going to be looking at trauma and how trauma has an impact on us and
Mm,
actually looking at are we living through a time of trauma with COVID-19, with this current pandemic? What are some of the effects that this is going to come up with? And how can we move forward and help process the emotions, the feelings, the physical uh, ailments that may come up as a result of the trauma that
wonderful.
people have gone through?
Well, we look forward. What time does it start?
It's at 7 p.m. on Wednesday.
Excellent. Now we look forward for that, and really good. I think there are two more broadcasts of that runaway program that's there with BeJoy, with Esther, with Dr. Chi Chi, and with Mark Liborn, and others as well. Um, it's a really interesting time. It's interesting for myself. Over the last week or so, um, I'm still receiving phone calls from people who are saying, "Les, do pray for me. My dad's died, my friends died, my mother has died," and it's quite traumatic for a lot of us. It is quite moving for me just receiving these phone calls. I was with a family on Monday in northwest London at a funeral because mother has died of COVID-19. And I've got to take a funeral. I'm at several other funerals going forward between now and March. Now, it's interesting because one of the other factors that's been driving the anxiety, the fear, is that many people have been informed by their WhatsApp group, by Facebook and other social media outlets about, the vaccine is dangerous, the vaccine is this, and people are genuinely fearful about it. And I think it's really important that we have some very open, frank discussion about the vaccine. People need to. And I'm very aware that people would probably disagree with me on my stand. Now, it was interesting because when we were talking about the vaccine since last year, April, we're saying, okay, they're looking for a vaccine. And we were talking about what does it mean for the Joe public like you and I? What does it mean? What does it mean for the nation or the nations of the world? Will they have a vaccine passport? Does it mean I can't go on holidays anymore? Does it mean I won't be able to visit my family and friends abroad? What does it mean? And then we began to hear stories about microchip, about this and about that. Now it's very interesting because personally, and I've said that to government ministers, and I've said that to Professor Fenton a few months ago, last month, that actually the government and the NHS have been really slow in terms of picking up the fears that's been driven by the social media platform. Many people are fearful about the vaccine. So what do we need to do? I see it as a church leader, as the leader of the Ascension Trust and all the initiatives that we run, to be able to talk and to give a view. Now, I will never tell anyone that you should or you must. What I be saying to people, read the facts, speak to your GP, speak to people that you know, that you trust, and have those discussions. So we've had those discussions in our house group, and Bible study groups. We've had them at work with the team. We've had them with friends. We've had them with family members. We've had them, and I've been having them. I've been reading up. I've been looking at various pandemics before and its implication and its impact. I've looked at vaccines, and I've looked at all these things. And I think it's important for people to look at these facts before they make up their minds. I'm also concerned because there's one of the other big factors is trust. I'm aware that many people do not trust governments. Many people do not trust big institutions, big corporate firms. I'm aware of that. But it's interesting because, when we think of our journeys, big companies make airplanes, big companies sell tickets, big companies distribute food, big companies process food. And what I found in life in the 21st century, that information is so accessible today on our phones, in our hands. We could walk, we could be anywhere and download information, or we could tap in to all kinds of source to get good, credible information. And I want to encourage us, all of us, to, before we say we're going to or we're not going to, I want all of us to recognize that it is important for us to do our due diligence in terms of what are the implications, where's it coming from, what's the ingredients, how will it impact me. And I've been encouraged to see data, people are releasing, NHS England and the government are releasing figures, the impact, has anyone died, Has anybody had any adverse effect on their living standard or living ability? What's been the problem? These datas are coming out, and I'm encouraged to be able to ask questions and hear. But I'm also reassured when people say, I don't know. And that's good. When an eminent professor says, we don't know, I think that's open and that's honest. And we've got to be willing to recognize that there will be some things that people do not know. So this is a very interesting discussion. So I would encourage people. I've said to people that I will be taking the vaccine. I've told people that I will be taking it. And I would say to people before they make any decisions, what they will do or what they will not do for themselves, look up the facts. I'm praying, and one of the things that we've been doing, we've been praying. We've been praying for the Prime Minister because, it's not an easy job. I'm not thinking for one moment that being a Prime Minister this time is an easy job. Let's continue to pray for Boris Johnson, the cabinet. Let's continue to pray for all our first ministers, that they would get wisdom, that the team around them, they'll get the best advice that's possible from the team around them. Let's pray for our industries, for those people who are business people, those people who've been running business for hundreds of years. Let's pray for them, that God will give them wisdom, that we will see business flourishing and employment will be great. Let's pray for small businesses, because there are many small businesses within the United Kingdom. Let's pray for those who have lost their business. Let's pray for those who have worked hard, 3 generations, and all of a sudden they've got to close their business. Let's remember them, that they will know strength and grace. Also, I've been very moved by our school teachers. What about our school teachers? Men and women who have been working. My wife's a school teacher, my daughter, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law. Are in education. Let's pray that God will give them strength. I was speaking to some undertakers some months ago, and we forget the undertakers, but they're human beings like us, having to take those bodies and bodies after bodies after bodies. Let's remember them, their families. So in this day where there's so many questions, in a time where people are thinking about themselves, I would encourage you to think about others as well. Let's ask the Lord. I'm a Christian. I have a faith that's real, a faith that's tangible. And I've heard Jesus says this: let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. So I want to encourage you, in the midst of all the pain, in the midst of all the difficulties, embrace the words of Jesus. Embrace the words of Jesus and allow him to minister to you. BeJoy, would you want to say one final thing before we close off today?
I think that the main thing for me is this idea of hope that goes with everything you shared about prayer and the words of Jesus. In Hebrews 11, it says, faith is the confidence of the things hoped for and the certainty of the things that aren't seen. So let's move forward in faith and confident that hope will arrive and hope is on its way.
Great stuff. Thank you for that. And it's just really good to see you all. Good to see Anwar. Good, Kaylee, it's good to see you. And folks who are just following us. Remember, every Friday we'll be here. Please do remember to download the app and subscribe. Okay, so you can subscribe and you can be informed whenever we're doing this broadcast. Please go to our Ascension Trust YouTube channel, and you could see this on there as well, and the other things that we're doing. Please pray as well for Dr. Chichi Ekitor. She's leading 5-2 medic teams, and she's working with a group of doctors, psychotherapists, counselors, nurses, and they're trying to really put on webinars, well-being webinars as well, to really help the community here in London and further afield. So please be safe. Remember, wash your hands. Remember, wear your mask. And remember, keep a social distance. And please, please, please do. I know it's hard to adhere to the government guidance. I know it's tough, it's hard, it's difficult, it's emotional, But I believe that we will soon get out of this, and one day we will remember what we went through. We'll be out of the woods and we'll be through it, and we'll be singing, having a great time, and knowing something of that relationship that we're so used to. So have a great weekend. The Lord bless you. Do join me on Sunday morning on my Facebook every Sunday morning, 8 o'clock. I share scriptures and I give a word of encouragement. So do join me every Sunday morning on Les Isaac Facebook page. The Lord bless you. Have a great week. Thank you, BeJoy.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.